Hey everybody, today is Monday, May 20th, 2024. Coming up on the show today, from The Fall Guy, editor Elísabet Ronaldsdóttir.
As an assistant editor, you need to be all in. If you're just there to become I think the system is so broken because it has to stop that people who want to edit have to go through assisting.
Yep.
I would be fired the first day if I was an assistant.
And assistant editor Matt Absher.
My advice really is to remember that for all of us, frankly, that this is a freelance gig. This is freelance. This is job to job, project to project. And the golden rule of freelance is it's never about the job. It's always about the next job.
Yes, all that and more on this edition of The Rough Cut. Okay, it's Monday again. Nobody likes Mondays. I get that. That's why I release this show on Mondays. Hopefully, it makes your Monday feel more like a Friday. Unless you listen to this on a Saturday. What does that mean? I don't know. Better get on with it, I guess. We got a big movie to talk about today. The Fall Guy. What is The Fall Guy? Well, if you still have an AOL email address, you might know that The Fall Guy was a TV series in the 80s starring Lee, the $6 Million Man Majors, as Colt Seavers, a stuntman who moonlights as a bounty hunter in his downtime. Apparently, a nice little part-time retail gig was not an option for Colt. And when your name is Colt Seavers, what choice do you have but to be a stuntman/bounty hunter? Now, whether or not you remember or are even aware of the original TV series, you are probably aware that David Leitch, stuntman/director David Leitch, I wonder if he ever moonlighted as a bounty hunter. I guess I'll have to keep on wondering because he's not on the show today. But David Leitch has a new movie adapted from the TV series, once again called The Fall Guy, but this time it stars Ryan Gosling as stuntman Colt Seavers, a stuntman who happens to be in love with camera person Jodie Banks, played by Emily Blunt. Colt's job and his love life are disrupted by a little workplace calamity, and he ends up losing his career and his girl. Does he go and get a job as a bounty hunter? No. He gets a gig parking cars as a valet. That is until producer Gail Meyer, played by Hannah Waddingham, reaches out to Colt to tell him that his former love Jodie is now directing Metal Storm, her first feature film. And the movie's not going well. And Gail tells Colt he could really help Jodie by getting down to Sydney, Australia, and taking on stunt duties for the troubled production. The rest of the story is yours for the low, low price of whatever your local movie theater is charging for tickets right now. But if you want to hear all about how The Fall Guy was edited, well, that is free, my friend. Because joining us on the show today are editor Elísabet Ronaldsdóttir and her assistant editor Matt Absher. And what a team they make. They've done 7 films together, 5 of them being with director David Leitch. So they have a pretty well-oiled machine going when it comes to their post workflow. We will talk to them about that and many more things in just a few moments. But first, I'm going to show you why this show is free to you, and that's by me talking up a few people. First person I want to talk up is you. You're on a quest, a journey, to learn all that you can about editing and filmmaking. Why else would you put up with me? Well, I like to think that this podcast delivers a lot of great info to help you in your quest. But did you know you can take it even further? The podcast, I mean. The whole quest business is really your thing. But if you type the following URL into your browser, and that URL is blog.frame.io/theroughcut, you can experience The Rough Cut on a whole other level. First, you can read it in blog form, and that's nice because you can read at your own pace rather than listen at mine. But even better is that you can see all kinds of other great content. Like what kind of content? Well, I can tell you for a fact that Elísabet and Matt sent me some great screen grabs of their Avid UI from The Fall Guy, as well as a great pic of the two of them. And you can see that over there on the blog. And then you got the needle drops. So many needle drops in this movie. And those will be there on the blog in the form of a Spotify playlist. And who knows, there may be a few behind-the-scenes videos as well. That is a lot of entertainment for your web browsing dollar. Except just like this podcast, it's free. As in, too good for you to pass up. So don't. Experience The Rough Cut in all its multimedia glory by visiting blog.frame.io/theroughcut. Okay, so now this is the point where faithful listeners to the podcast will go, yeah, this is the part where he talks about extreme music. Yes, that is true. But I have a little anecdote for you. Last week, I finally, at long last, made a pilgrimage to visit my friends at Extreme Music out in LA. It was awesome. Why was it awesome? Well, first, because they're awesome people. But second, because Extreme Music is located within the vast sonic compound of sometimes rough cut guest Hans Zimmer. And it was amazing. The composers they have working there, the music they're making. I even got to see the musical equivalent of the Batcave, Hans's studio. It was epic. No, Hans wasn't there. The visit was sans Hans. But I was there to lay the groundwork for something fun for you later this year. So hopefully it all works out. Until then, let me tell you about how you can make some of that incredible music your own. And that is by going to extrememusic.com to get great production audio for your next film or TV show. They have a seemingly unlimited supply of the best tracks from top-shelf musicians and composers, just like our man Hans, as well as other audio luminaries like Atticus Ross, Mark Mothersbaugh, and Quincy Jones. You can peruse this incredible catalog of tunes using simple keyword searches on terms like genre, composer, tempo, lyrics. And do not forget that amazing reference track technology of theirs, where you can upload a track to them, and they will find you ones from their library just like it. And when it is time to sign on the digital dotted line, of course you can do that right there on their website, or they have human beings, actual human beings who can help walk you through the licensing. It doesn't get any better, and it doesn't get any easier. So the next time you have a story to tell it with great production audio from Extreme Music. I got a story to tell. It's about an editor and an assistant editor who work great together and make fun movies. Please welcome to the podcast, Elísabet Ronaldsdóttir and Matt Absher. Somebody did a documentary about making stunt movies. They interviewed you, right, Elísabet?
They don't know. Oh, no. They interviewed Keanu Reeves. Who is he?
Yeah, right, exactly. What does he know about cutting action? Elísabet, last time we spoke, we talked about how you are recognized for being an action movie editor. I asked if there was anything else you hadn't done that you wanted to do, and you said, I've always wanted to do a horror movie because maybe my grandchildren would be impressed if I did a horror movie because they like them.
That is not a lie. Matt knows.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that any closer to becoming a reality, you cutting a horror movie?
No one called. No one. Not one phone call. But no, I'm extremely happy about my career. I love that people believe I'm a stunt editor, and it doesn't bother me at all. But obviously, any editor can edit anything. It's about the editing, not the genre. So that's something that I don't know why people do that, pigeonhole everyone into.
It's an old Hollywood habit.
It's an old Hollywood habit.
Last time we met, we were talking about Bullet Train. And I recall you mentioned reworking the opening because it just didn't feel like a David Leitch movie to you. And I thought that was interesting because in recent interviews with him talking about The Fall Guy, he said that in a way he was trying to not make what would be considered a David Leitch movie. So having worked with him as closely as you have on multiple films, I guess I'd like to start by asking you how you define what a David Leitch movie is and how The Fall Guy might be a departure from that.
Well, David Leitch movies are always fun, action-packed, and R-rated. And The Fall Guy is absolutely action-packed, but what makes it a tiny bit different is it's more or less handheld. It's a lot of handheld, which doesn't happen very often in David Leitch. And it has kind of a different color feel to it. So they were going out of their own comfort box to do that.
And they said as much at the start.
There were so many interesting things about how we did this that differ from other movies. One of it was the film grain. We had film grain incorporated into the dailies.
Using live grain. So that was unique. So Jonathan Sella, the DP, wanted this sort of analog grain look, but he wanted it through dailies. So the lab was applying it, which meant our vendors kind of had to, VFX vendors had to sort of match it. But it meant the look was baked in from beginning. So we sort of, through previews, through studio screenings, we really knew what we were going to get.
Which was amazing. But it also had its cons, which was, it was very difficult to see if there was soft focus, which didn't happen. But if we wouldn't have been able necessarily to see that as clearly because of the grain. But it was amazing to be able to show that movie from the beginning.
He used really vintage lenses too, these Panasonic C-series. So we did have some soft top and bottom. So it really did have, right out of the Avid, it really had a sort of projected cinematic look, which usually you're not used to.
Well, what was the impetus behind going that route, doing the grain and those lenses?
We'd have to let Jonathan speak for himself.
Call Jonathan. Jonathan does use a lot of those lenses throughout all the projects. So that was not a new thing. That's just his look. That's his style.
Bullet Train, going back to that film, was based on a book. And you had mentioned when we talked about that, you had read the book. mostly out of curiosity. The Fall Guy, of course, is based, and I'm going to say loosely, on an 80s TV series, has a similar construct to what you're doing. And there is some Easter eggs, of course, maybe a cameo or two that call back to that series. But did you at all take any time to go back and watch any old episodes? Well, I guess by definition, they're all old episodes, but did you brush up on the TV series at all?
I did, in the sense I found 2 or 3 episodes that I watched, only for the fun of it. But it was very loosely based on the TV series, and it's more like it's paying homage to it, more than that it's based on it. It's absolutely paying homage to it. But no, I didn't study it.
You didn't binge watch
I didn't binge watch. No, I didn't.
Well, you've kind of already answered my question, but I wondered if there was anything stylistically the TV show might have had any influence. Like the way you do the open, you delay the main credits until the point where the movie gets going. He takes the gig with Gale. He gets back in action. And that almost feels like a TV show style in that you have this big setup, getting to know the character, getting to know what the plot mechanics are going to be, and then the credits come in. Was that reworked at all, or was that tied into the TV show at all?
Not necessarily, but it is up to a point. But we also have to face, this is how we've been doing movies for at least 12 years. You know what I mean? This demand that we situate ourselves in the plot and the characters before we do the credits, or we even skip front credits completely. So yeah, we knew it. We talked about it actually, that it had like a TV show feel to it, which we liked. But I don't think it was meant to be that. It was kind of just a fun surprise, I guess.
Well, there's a lot of fun surprises in the movie. Colt's voiceover is there at the beginning and at the end. That voiceover element, was that always baked in from the beginning? And how did that come and go? Or how did you debate that in the cutting room?
It was not written in the script. It was David that had the idea that for people who didn't know what stuntman did, that we would make this montage and there was a voiceover over that. But then we did test screenings and there was some confusion about some elements in the film. And that's how the voiceover grew. But instead of just not having it at all again, we decided to bring it back in the end, almost just like a button to finish it off.
The open of the film, that sequence at the beginning where he's sort of down and out and working as a valet, and then getting that call from Gale to get back in the gig. There's a lot of intercutting back and forth between him as a valet and then him in his apartment talking to Gale. And I just want to hear a little bit about how that sequence evolved and your approach to putting that together.
So there are a couple of reasons why we ended up with the intercutting of it. One was it's never good to repeat certain story points. Even just knowing that he works as a valet and then her telling him he works as a valet, he talking about being a valet, it's like it becomes repetitive. So that was one of the reasons to bake it off, so we could put it up against each other to tell the story of him being a valet. But another reason was also to strengthen his motivation of going to Australia to help Jodie do the movie. So originally, we had the valet scene first. He drove the car and then went home and then got the call from Gale. But this way, we could build up more him making the decision of going to Australia and doing it with this bang ride on that fancy car.
When we started talking, I asked you about what is a David Leitch movie. It's got action and it's R-rated and it's going to be funny. And in The Fall Guy, it's a romance, it's a comedy, it's an action movie, it's a sci-fi movie within all of this because you have the movie Metal Storm that they're working on. So you have all these different tones to work with. And I'm just wondering how that affected your work and how challenging that might have been to make it feel like one cohesive film and not 3 different films stitched together.
I mean, one thing we can say is that a David Leitch movie is never simple. And I love that. And both him and his producer, Kelly McCormick, they emphasize and make a big deal about being story-based and character-based in their action movies, which is such a treat for all of us. I mean, David is the master of tone, but yes, it was difficult to balance. And we had to experiment with a lot of things. Of course, once Colt and Jody unite on set, you didn't want to lose contact with these characters. So that's why a lot of the intercutting between Colt and Jody happens, is to keep them both in the moment and not lose sight of them, because they're amazing together, right? But yeah, finding the tone, it was hard. And a lot of experiments and trials, but this is where we landed and we're pretty proud of it.
There's also a mystery.
Yeah, which is kind of like Bullet Train. There are so many strong characters in this movie. So it was also about balancing that so they didn't overshadow our main characters.
Matt, as Elizabeth's working through all those different iterations, what kind of work are you doing to support her in that way? Like in terms of managing different sequences, in terms of managing different story beats?
I stay out of the way. I just stay out of the way. You know, what she did to our first reel, I mean, reel one is classic Elizabeth, and how she pulled that off and convinced David to go as far as it needed to go. I got a front row seat to that. I love that ride, and it's just a pleasure to watch.
Which is not completely true, because he's extremely supportive and nothing goes out of the editing room that Matt hasn't greenlit, basically.
But Elizabeth hasn't worked with as many editors as I have, so she doesn't know what I know.
Matt is extremely supportive, and we talk about cuts. Like, we will sit down and discuss them and talk about them and think about it, which is always extremely helpful. And he does all first passes on sound as well, which is a lot.
Well, if you're asking me what I did on this one, it was a beast of a film. The schedule was, as we all know, the studio now just folds everything on top of itself. And every department wants and needs to be fed constantly. So it was a big job just for whatever little minuscule creative input I might have had, I was swamped with just the bureaucracy of keeping this thing on the rails.
It sounds like she trusts you quite a bit.
Well, we have an amazing crew. Sydney, Los Angeles, great crew.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about the Sydney aspect a little bit. Elizabeth, I don't know if you noticed this, but your co-editor on Shang-Chi, The Legend of the Ten Rings, Harry Yoon, he was a bit of a social media celebrity recently. Florence Pugh posted a video touring the set of Thunderbolts, and there was Harry cutting away on his Avid right outside the soundstage with director Jake Schreier. It was a pretty basic setup, probably designed for mobility. I know that you and David prefer to be working closely during production. So was it a similar situation for you being that close to set? And what was your setup like there?
No, we don't choose to sit on set and edit unless it's something that really needs to be put together ASAP to find something out. We will do that. But the situation in Sydney was that our editing suite was on the top of the stage, on a floor above the stage. So we had a very good contact and a very close one with everyone on set. Everyone knows that's super helpful. It's so much easier to have a dialogue instead of always texting or writing emails or phone calls. It's a completely different thing that you can be in the same space.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's amazing. And we have had an amazing team. We had an amazing time in Sydney, Australia. We had how many days?
80 days of main photography and like 25 second unit and a bunch of aerial days and array days. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Well, Matt, when you get the call from Elizabeth and she says, we're going to Sydney and we got this big movie to do and I need my cutting room humming like you always make it hum, what is your responsibility there in terms of getting the cutting room set up and getting the workflow set up so that she can be as creative as she needs to be?
Well, I've said this before, but I just hire the right people. I mean, I've worked with a lot of editors who have really particular ways of working, and you just have to sort of follow these like clerical guidelines. Elizabeth is all about just doing the work, and how it gets to her is not going to clutter her process. And the way I work is just to be really non-hierarchical with the team and just play to everyone's strengths. So every cutting room sort of workflow is different for me based on, of course, obviously the project, but also who's working with me. So I don't really have an answer for that because each one is different, really.
Yeah, but we do make like a wish list of what we need and want. And my wish list is always just get me the fastest computer.
Yes. Yeah. There hasn't yet to be a computer that is fast enough to keep up. And she melts mice. She just plows through footage. Thank God, too, because there was a lot of footage.
Yeah.
Well, the movie's like 2 hours and 7 minutes final runtime, I think, if memory serves. Do you recall just the amount of footage you had to work with?
I blocked it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Neither of us can remember, but the ratio was so high because we had so much variable speed as well, shooting 97, 120.
Yeah. Every day they were respeeding. Even like dialogue scenes. It was like, what's going on?
So why did they do that?
Well, they did it because parts of it were within action beats or, and it's fun. It's super fun when you can play with the variable speed, but it's just a lot of work, especially for Matt and our crew. But everyone did amazingly. The only thing that slowed us down on this movie were the strikes. We had both the writers and actors strike. Exactly when we were trying to finish the movie, like trying to get the additional voice recording in and stuff. And obviously we couldn't do it.
That additional voice recording aspect you brought up, the ADR on David's movies or on action movies, is there that much more ADR to do because of the nature of these films? And do you get to run those sessions as the editor?
I don't run anything, my friend. I'm not in the running business, but we do participate in all of it. And again, we have such an amazing crew and people around us, especially because it's a David Leitch movie and Kelly McCormick. One of the aspects of it is that you are very often working with the same people. When they find persons they like to work with and are good, their loyalty is endless. So we will always work with the same people. For example, on sound, we worked with Mark Stokinger since John Wick, the first one. And he's amazing. His crew is amazing. And Jason Freeman, it's so amazing what they can do in sound these days. So there was this whole scene with Colt on the phone talking to Jody, and he's driving a boat. And that was one clunky boat, I tell you. But he cleaned up every single clunk.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to ADR that scene because it was an emotional scene. And obviously that's always more difficult for both actors, but also editors to get that to work properly. But Jason Freeman came in with his cape and cleaned it all up. And then Mark, he has just this whole soundscape that he designs. It's amazing, makes it fun. We had an amazing visual effects group, even though almost everything in this movie is practical effects and stunts. But even if that is, visual effects have to come in and clean out the wires and the padding, and maybe there's a blue screen or a green screen or change the sky or whatever it is. And they were amazing.
So probably less previs than other movies because of so much practical stuff done. But let's talk about stunt viz and working with that. I think that's something that not everyone is familiar with when they're just starting their careers and learning about the process of filmmaking. What is the process of working with stunt viz and how you incorporate it into your edit and then build on it from there?
So the stunt crews are amazing, and they will make stunt viz and they will build on their own stunt vizes and send us constantly new and new stunt vizes. And it's a great roadmap to the stunts that are going to be filmed. But I don't think we've ever gotten back the same. Because once you go on location, or even if it's in a studio, whatever it is, there are so many things that can affect it. So it's always going to be different from what the stunt people do. But it's a great roadmap. So when you start getting those dailies in, you know exactly how they visualize and want that stunt sequence to be, but you can't just copy it.
The screening I saw, the film was preceded by an intro from David and Ryan Gosling, professing that the film is a tribute, if not an outright love letter to stunt people. Being a former stuntman himself, and this could be a question that's hard for you to answer, but in your observation, how does he approach stunts differently from other directors?
I mean, I haven't worked with that many, maybe two different directors, but David is special in the way that he knows stunts very well. He respects them. And also with the support of his producer, Kelly McCormick, they give the time and resources needed to rehearse the stunts, to rehearse the actors, to do the stunts, so they can be able to do longer takes with the actors, etc. So a lot of that is just prep time that they give to stunts, that they allow them to have. And also he just knows exactly where to put the camera. Not only was he a stuntman, he's also been a second unit director on so many famous stunt movies. So yeah, he knows what he's doing. But you don't have to be that to have this love for stunts. Look at me. My whole career is built on the stunt world. I've never done a stunt in my life, but I'm a film editor. But that's my career. So they have given me my career.
You've never done a stunt, but you do have a dance background.
I do. Never have sacrificed myself in any way for that.
David knows where to place the cameras. Let's talk about how many cameras. I think last time we spoke, you said normally we're a 1 or 2 cameras shooting these David Leitch movies. How about for The Fall Guy? How might that have changed?
Same director of photography. So yes, it was the same thing.
No, it wasn't an outrageous amount of cameras like some maybe less experienced directors would think that they would need. And I think that goes to particularly David and Sella's coordination of blocking and camera and lens choice. It's really complementary to the stunts, even in subtle ways that I think other directors just don't think about. They just sort of want the stunt to happen in front of them.
But I mean, when we did, there is a world record broken in this movie, the Canon roll, 8.5 roll, and we had so many cameras, didn't we? Maybe 5, 6, 7, how many? We're both old. Yeah. We can't remember anything. This was like last year. But yes, we had a lot of cameras on that, and that's when that camera overheated. There was one camera, not underneath the car, but it went over it. It was a beautiful art shot, amazing, and the camera overheated.
Then we got an outfit out in London called Fluent involved. These real deep image science nerds, and they drilled into the layers of these pixels, and it took them a few months, but they pulled the shot out and got it back to us in immaculate shape. It was really remarkable, and it's a beautiful shot. So everyone was really desperate for them to fix it, and they did.
So we've established that we're all old, so remembering things can be difficult. I cop to that too. We do recall that there was a lot of footage, we just don't know how much, and that on some of these big action sequences, there are a lot of cameras, more than the normal dialogue scene, and every now and then one of them melts down. But being able to absorb all that footage during dailies, how is that set up? Do you watch everything in multicam so you're able to get through that much stuff that much faster? Or do you literally watch every frame from every camera straight on by itself?
I watch it in multicam, but I do make notes, just with markers, make notes. And then I might look at some shots individually for different reasons. But yeah, it's a lot of shots. But I mean, we're not alone. We have the script supervisor, and we always make a deal about talking to our script supervisors and get to know them, because we need as detailed information as possible through the script supervisor. So we are not spending our times on shots we are definitely not going to be able to use because of one reason or another. Because for me, it's the most important thing. You have to remember, no one is alone in filmmaking. You always have a lot of people around you, and those people also have people around them. People have to understand that. That's also a part of the love of movies. That's why we love the movies. It's not only because we like watching them, we also love the community in which we are to make them. And I think a way to respect that community is to talk to your coworkers, to your collaborators, because they truly are collaborators.
I've heard editors talk about don't underestimate the importance of meal breaks or lunch or just getting together outside of the cutting room, because that's where a lot of the not just the camaraderie, but also you sort of find things within the movie when you're just sort of away from it. Like it's really important to have that time together.
I absolutely 100% agree. If you don't have a life, where is your creativity going to come from? Because that's just something that comes with living a life.
Well, Matt, I don't think I've ever asked an assistant this. What's a day in the life like for you? When does your day start? What are the first things you tackle? And what are the things you save for the afternoon? And when do you go home? I mean, just give me the basic day in the life of Matt Absher.
That's a whole podcast right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all right.
It entirely depends on where you're at in the process. The arc of making a film has so many different hills and valleys. So my life and the crew's life during dailies is a lot different than director's cut and then preview stages and mix stages and delivery stages. So there really is no one answer to that. But I mean, it's sort of a first one in, last one out devotion. If it's not literal, that's the idea, that you close the day, as it were. So everything that could be tied up is tied up. And if you don't, you'll just get swamped.
It sounds like your work is never done.
Well, it isn't, because if you have a moment, you have to then move on to what you're doing next to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Prevent disaster.
No, yeah, exactly. Preempt. There's always something on the calendar that's coming up that you have to prep for or start talking about or start coordinating. So it's hard to give you an easy answer to that other than it's a constant movement forward.
Can I just say, this is partly because of how the industry has changed from film over to digital, and it gets harder almost every year because there are so many new elements within. Even just sending dailies in different formats to different apps and tablets. So it came with the digital revolution, and it's just like getting more and more and more and more the work for your first and second.
I mean, there's efficiencies and time saving with technology, but producers are the first to recognize that, and they just close the calendar on you. So if you got some new tool is introduced that saves you time, that time will be stolen pretty quickly. I mean, crews are not alleviated much by the new technology, but God bless it, because decisions can be made much earlier. And that's huge. That's huge.
Let's talk about making an early decision. The film has a lot of fun needle drops. One in particular became a recurring motif of the movie. And that's Kiss's detour into disco, I Was Made for Loving You. You must have had that one locked down early because it was prevalent throughout the film in different ways. Tell me about that one and the process you go through to identify and test out all the other needle drops.
Was it from the beginning? I'm trying to remember. I think it came a bit later on.
Yeah, there was some back and forth.
There was some back and forth.
Yeah, there was.
But this is, if you look at Bullet Train, it's kind of the same thing, where they break down the song and make it into a score or change it, and you can find it in, different variations throughout the score. And it's exactly the same thing as Dom and David did with Bullet Train. And that's their thing. We had two amazing music editors, Angie Rubin, who did our needle drops, and Dan Pinter, who did our score with Dom Lewis's score.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift was Kelly McCormick came up with Taylor Swift. That was a funny one.
Yeah.
That was a late thing.
Yeah.
Well, we did manage it into our last test screening. Yeah. Music is a very powerful thing, and we tried. Oh my God! I'm getting almost PTSD. We tried so many needle drops all over the place, and poor Angie just had to she was very busy. So there was a lot to try again, and that's a part of the trying to find the tone, was trying different things.
There's a gag reel at the end of the film during the credits. As you were editing, were you marking bits like that and creating a bin specifically for putting that together at the end, or did Matt take on those duties?
Oh, he was busy just keeping that ship asail. So no, but there was a lot you had to do because we could not find all of that in our material. There's less than 10% in that, what you call a gag reel, which is the love letter to stunts. There is less than 10% from the movie itself.
Yeah.
So 87 North, and it's showing now, 87 North did a documentary series about stunts and making of stunt movies. So they did, I think, 5 episodes. 3 were on a different movie, and 2 of them were on The Fall Guy. So we could go and get material from those filmmakers. They did a lot behind the scenes, and we had to communicate with them and try to get the shots from them, specific things. And I mean, they shot everything. So there was so much to go through and figure out. And then we just had to plow through that material. It was a lot.
Yeah, that sequence was a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. But it was fun, and it was supposed to be fun. So that was nice.
There's so many fun moments in this film, but there's one in particular I wanted to ask you about, and it's a very kind of meta moment. Jodie and Colt are on the phone together, and Jodie's talking about making the decision to, quote, go split screen in her movie, Metal Storm, that they're working on. And then, of course, in the film The Fall Guy, you go into a split screen sequence where they're having this phone call back and forth. Something we've certainly seen before. But in this case, you're not just syncing their dialogue so it's cohesive, but syncing movements. And that looks to be a lot more challenging, possibly even requiring some interframe things like animats or speed ramps. But tell me about that sequence and any sort of challenges you faced in putting that together.
So they were shot separately, but they were both in the space and both on the phone. I mean, they did amazingly in camera when they shot it, but they're shot separately. They shot Ryan first, and then when they shot Emily, they would send us each take, and we were on the loft above them. Yeah. So they would send us just directly from the camera each take so we could test if it worked. And it worked amazingly. And we did get some visual effect assistance. There is a zoom in one of the takes that didn't quite sync up. So visual effects came in, as they often do, and fixed it for us. Matt Sloan was our visual effects supervisor, Kate Morrison, and Chris McClintock. So they were our visual effect team, and we worked very closely with them, and it was very rewarding. But yes, we tested each, and then we had to shorten it because it was a bit too long. So at some point we thought, okay, we'll cut it down. But I actually liked it more cut down. I liked the energy that came with like a bit harsher cuts in places.
Yeah. In The Fall Guy, you have this typewriter motif.
Yeah.
So you're using typing as transitions. How did that come into play? Was that always there from the beginning, or was that something you experimented with?
No, that's something we experimented. We went through a whole lot, but we had a company called Antenna do the graphics for us. And we had a meeting with them where David went through what the film was about. And we also allowed them to watch the movie because the graphics didn't come until we had locked the edit. So they watched the movie and we talked about it, and they came up with several motifs. And this is what everyone fell in love with.
So we established early on that the TV series, The Fall Guy, there's some nice little cute tie-ins, but very different, the TV series and the movie. But you do have some Easter eggs. Some are more obvious than others. In one of the fights, you hear the sort of Bionic Man sound during the fight. And of course, Lee Majors played both the Fall Guy and the Bionic Man. That only happened once, so it was kind of a cute little wink at the audience. Tell me about how that came about.
That's just people having fun in the mix.
It was a Mark Steckender's team who put it in. And
we loved it. Everyone loved it.
Yeah.
It's fun. Sound likes to do that. They throw in different sounds that they want us to figure out what is.
Yeah.
So they had fun with that. And it works. So everyone was happy.
I think you mentioned this once or twice, but I didn't really follow up on it. And that is the test screenings. I think I read that David said that one of the things that he noted was that they wanted more romance.
Yes, they wanted more romance. Maybe because there was a tiny bit too much action.
Yeah.
So they felt they were away from Jodie too long, which is why we ended up intercutting Jodie in the bar and the garbage truck chase.
Anything to get the two of them together.
It was all about having them both together. People love that duo.
Yeah, hopefully they're back again.
Hopefully. Wouldn't that be nice? They should be on every movie from now on. They shouldn't do movies without them.
Every movie now is Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling?
Yeah, exactly.
So they wanted a little more romance, but I'm sure they loved the action. For each of you, do you have a favorite stunt and a favorite scene, if it happens that your favorite stunt wasn't necessarily in your favorite scene?
God, there are so many good stunts. Well, we have a world record. Who's not going to have that as a favorite? That should be a pick. But there are so many more. Like the truck flying over the flower bed. That's visual effects, all those flowers. They shot the truck going, and it felt a bit like it was just a wall. Like, how is he flying over the wall? Yeah. So we had to brainstorm and came up with that flower bed. So that's visual effects doing that. And then it just, everyone takes everything away and has fun with it. So in the end, it was like him going over and flowers over the car and stuff. It's fun.
The dog.
And the dog was fun.
Mine has to be the simplest one of all of them, and frankly, the most dangerous, the free fall from the helicopter.
That was amazing.
That was crazy.
But we also threw a superstar off the 8th floor of a building. So
yeah, but you didn't jump out of a helicopter. I'm telling you.
So that was a bit stressful.
Yeah.
Not us, but the producer and director was really stressed, like pushing their superstar.
And it was pretty early, too.
It was pretty early on. It was like...
How about a scene, not just the stunt, but a favorite scene that you enjoyed cutting?
Favorite scene? Oh, God, there are so many. You are asking for so much because there are so many favorite scenes. I mean, it was a joy intercutting, all of the intercuttings. Like in the beginning, the ballet and the Gale phone call, that was fun. It was so much fun cutting the karaoke bar and the truck. That was a delightful scene to work on. Everything with our friend Aaron, Tom Reiter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tom
Reiter. That was fun. But it was also fun that we were doing so many different things. There was a commercial which Picture Mill helped us with. But we had to work that out. We had a trailer in the end, the trailer for Metal Storm. Houston Young helped us there to make it more trailer-like.
Yeah.
There were so many crazy things. I'm trying to remember everything, but we also have a music video in the end. It was so many different, and we have 2 movies that we also had to kind of work between, which was super fun. Also, outside the Opera House, the Sydney Opera House, the whole sequence there, which was to portray stunts and how we do stunts. But at the same time, we had to find ways, how can we keep the love affair within that, keep it energetic and sweet. It's really difficult with ugly, boring people, but but yeah. So it was so many favorite scenes. Gail, Hannah Waddingham, that woman is a powerhouse. And I'm sad to say there are so many good jokes on the cutting room floor.
So we've talked about the relationships of these wonderful actors. Let's talk about the relationship of these wonderful editors and assistant editors. Elísabet, what do you do to help bring him along and help foster his career?
She just calls. I say yes. You kidding?
Please. I love making movies with Matt because he is an amazing, and I hate calling him assistant. We call him captain. He's an amazing captain, and every fire he will put out. So everything is a smooth ride. And he keeps everyone around him happy. So we can laugh looking at him. We just look at him and go, wow. Worked together for 12 years because you asked, what do you do to make him happy? Because I don't make his deal. I have nothing to do with any of it. So the only way for me to make him happy is leave him alone as much as possible. But also, I think it's important also for every editor to know, like Matt explained before, he's the first person in, the last person out. So as an editor, I also feel obliged to leave early. No, but I'm not even
That's
joking.
The best gift. No, it's no joke.
It's no joke because I know they're going to stay behind at least an hour after I leave. And they're always here when I arrive in the morning.
But to be clear, that also speaks to Elspeth's talent and confidence, because I've worked with plenty of people that work endlessly because they're at a different level. Let's just put it like that.
Yeah, we're old.
I think we've established that.
I'm putting it out as a positive thing. We're old and wise.
Well, Captain Matt Absher, what advice do you have for the next generation that would love to be in the captain's chair where you are?
Being an assistant editor can be a career. It can be a middle-class career. I mean, it's tough on family and it can be tough on relationships, but it is a career path for young editors who love editing and love this process and want to stay in it, even if they can't sort of strike out on their own as a picture editor or sound editor. You know, you've got a front row seat to the process, and as long as you can find good people, then it's a very satisfying career. And I've been at it for years and years, and I don't know quite how I've pulled it off this long, but it's doable. It's totally doable.
He has an amazing career.
All right. Let's move back on.
Amazing career. I'm your boss. Amazing career. And I think one of the beauties about Matt and his work is that he is interested in it and he respects it and wants to do it. Because I think also because of how complicated and the magnitude of the work as an assistant editor, you need to be all in. If you're just there to become I think the system is so broken because it has to stop that people who want to edit have to go through assisting.
Yep.
I would be fired the first day if I was an assistant. I would have
never hired you.
No, you would never. He wouldn't. So I'm just lucky that I didn't have to go through the American system. I just went through my European easy peasy thing and became a film editor. I would never have survived that assistant route. Never. Not because I'm stupid. It's just a complete different set of tools you need to do that work. You know.
Well, my advice really is to remember that for all of us, frankly, that this is a freelance gig. This is freelance. This is job to job, project to project. And the golden rule of freelance is it's never about the job. It's always about the next job. So you really have to squeeze every opportunity you get and learn something new, expand your network, and ultimately become sort of indispensable. Make sure that nothing runs right without you. If that means sabotaging all the equipment so you can rescue the day, so be it.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah, that's some good advice right there. Not necessarily about trashing the equipment, although that's one way to do it, but you got to make it so they can't live without you, or at least so they'd really miss you. I am thankful we did not miss the chance to catch up with Elísabet and Matt so we could hear all about their work together on The Fall Guy. A big thank you to both of them for making the time to visit with us, while they are already working on another project. When it is time for you to work on another project, 4 out of 5 editors recommend you do it on Avid Media Composer. That 5th editor just can't be helped. Don't listen to him, listen to me. Better yet, don't listen to anybody. Follow your heart, follow your gut, and then follow that link in the show notes to the Media Composer page on avid.com. Once you're there, you can learn about all the latest Media Composer has to offer your editing talents. New tools for Media Composer and Pro Tools Interop. New enhancements to ScriptSync and PhraseFind. And I have it on good authority that there's another fun release coming up soon. So if you want all that fun for yourself, get your hands on a monthly or annual subscription to Avid Media Composer. Well, that is a wrap on another episode of the podcast. Before I go, I'll do my semi-annual appeal that you make sure that you are not only subscribed to the podcast, but the YouTube channel as well. And then after that, would you kindly tell a friend or two? Or you can rudely tell them, I don't care, that's up to you. You might get better results if you're nice, though. I wouldn't know. But I do know that it was great hanging out with you today, and I do look forward to doing it again soon. Until then, this is your old pal Matt Fury, thanking you for checking in on this thing called The Rough Cut.